There we go. Little microphone issue. Some good music by Pretzel.rocks. I like it. Let's breathe down a little bit. Well, good morning. Welcome to Coffee with Steve. Oh boy, I am like right in your face this morning. I hope that's okay with you. Maybe I can do something about that. Let me see if I can find the right setting for this. I'm always adjusting. You know, the first thing that I seem to always be doing when I start up these things is have to adjust the size of things. Oh, wow. Okay, maybe I'm a little too low. There we go. Hey, how's everybody doing today? Good Wednesday. Right? It is Wednesday, right? Yeah, 26th. June 26th, Wednesday. Thank you so much for joining me today. So, today's topic is kind of heavy. I do this quite often. You know, it seems like almost every topic I talk about is heavy, and I think that's part of the character of what I want to do with this channel is talk about the important things and discuss these things that we really need to discuss, the things that need to be talked about, the things that you need to know. And, maybe I'm putting a lot of my own slant to this, but it's my channel. I get to do that, right? I get to say whatever the heck it is that I want to say and talk about whatever the heck it is I want to talk about. It's just kind of the way that it goes. So today, the topic is Civil War. Civil War. So I'm not talking about the Abraham Lincoln North and South Civil War. I'm talking about this belief right now that there is an impending civil war coming. And it's not just, if you've been thinking this, you're not alone. You are certainly not alone at all. So what I'd first start off with is there was a video done by Tim Pool, which several of you guys probably have heard of Tim Pool or know who Tim Pool is. If you don't, he's a journalist. He used to work for Vice News. He no longer does. He's kind of doing his own thing now. He's a bit more on the left. He has more leftist policies. But one of the things that he is championing, there we go, is freedom of speech, and especially when it comes to the technology of today, right? The Facebooks, the Twitters, the YouTubes of the world. What are they doing to kind of, what are they doing as far as the conversation goes, right? Are they imparting their own influence on things? And he pretty well documents every time that he sees an injustice in the news, he tries to point it out, whether it's on the right or the left. But unfortunately, the overwhelming amount of injustice is happening to the conservative side. And so the majority of the things that he's saying and covering is the, if I could take a phrase, the oppression of the conservative side, right? There is definitely an oppression of the conservative voice in the media, right? It's not necessarily in your day-to-day. There's no military force. There's no one's going to pull a gun on you right now because you have a conservative view, at least in the majority of the time. So we're kind of seeing a lot of this distrust in the media because they are influencing the conversation in such a way that is very much trying to get rid of the conservative viewpoint. And you guys know I'm definitely much more on the conservative. I lean more libertarian, though I am not a libertarian. My technical the party that I am officially affiliated with is the Constitution Party. It's a very small party. You guys probably may have heard of it. There's a lot of infighting within the party, which is frustrating. There's really no coalescing around anybody or anything, and that's kind of a problem. And that certainly is a good reason why a lot of people would not join the Constitution Party. I totally understand. But principally and morally, they align with my ideas 95% of the way. So because of that, I affiliate with a party that best represents my opinions on things and the way that I think the government should run. Libertarians are probably a close second. I very much am in favor of freedoms. But I do think that there are certain things that the government does unfortunately have to get involved with. So anyway, Tim Pool, like I said, is kind of this more, his political affiliation is more Democrat. I mean, he voted for Bernie Sanders, right? But he's also kind of chronicling all of these injustices that are happening, regardless of which party affiliation it's happening to. And by and large, the majority of these things are going against anybody of a conservative leaning. And that's why a lot of people get the false impression that he is a conservative figurehead. He's not. That's not his point. He's trying to be, I wouldn't say you could say he's neutral about it. He's obviously got certain biases of what he's looking for and what he's reporting, but he's trying to remain somewhat neutral, and he does do things about the times that the right goes against the left, and that's all fair and good. But one of the things that he is constantly posting about, I say constantly, but pretty regularly, is his belief that there is an impending civil war. He just sees the discourse that's happening in the media and amongst people, and he just says, this is going to happen. He has a lot of figures. He has some interesting videos that actually kind of point to the statistics around it and kind of the events that lead up to a civil war and how cyclical the cycle can be and how we're heading towards another one of those cycles. So there's a lot of stuff that he does about that. And I don't necessarily, to be honest with you, I'm going to say, I don't know that we are going to have a civil war. I don't know. I can't predict the future. But I do see a lot of similarities in today's culture. I think that there's a little bit of the jumping to violence, right? That's kind of the thing that really has to be ascertained. Right? Are we really that violent of a culture that's going to become an acceptable solution? Okay, so Tim Pool has this video. I'm going to switch over to, there we go. So, oh boy, that's a great look for you, Tim. Frame 1 of your video. I love it. So he does this. So in my home state here, Oregon, the Republicans walked out of the state Senate. And there's only like, was it 30? No, 50 senators? I can't, no, maybe it's 30. I think it's 30. 30 senators? Oh, come on, Steve. I can't remember exactly. Anyway, there's only so many senators in the state of Oregon, in the local state government, right? And all of the Republicans, well, 11 of the Republicans left the state, just completely fled the state so that they wouldn't have to vote on this climate change bill, which is a cap and trade bill. In the state of Oregon, we have a cap and trade bill. Now, the Republicans, they knew they wouldn't be able to overturn the bill. They wouldn't be able to vote down the bill. So what they did was they just left the state so that there couldn't be a quorum. There has to be a quorum. In the rules of our Senate in Oregon, you have to have a quorum in order for there to be a passage of a bill. So by having them all leave, there weren't enough people that present to vote in order for the bill to pass. So that was just kind of a tactic. And this happens, actually, this is not the first time Oregon senators have done this. This is like the third or fourth time this has happened in just like last 3 or 4 years. So, but what he talks about is how it's like this escalation of things that's going on. And I thought I would offer the people who watch this a little bit of insight. And it turns out that I had the most liked comment on here because I went through and I explained kind of what is going on culturally in Oregon. And I think this is relevant. Okay. So I said, I'm a native of Oregon, and I can tell you exactly how this has come to pass. So I'm just basically going to read exactly what my comment says. Oregon is largely divided into 2 classes of people, the native Oregonian farmer, rancher, logger type that work hard off the land. The other side is more urban hipster that likes nature. In fact, the tree hugger moniker came out of Oregon back during the spotted owl issue from the conflict between these exact same groups of people. That and also clear cutting was another thing that was going on too. Over time, as Californians and Seattleites moved away from their respective liberal bubbles, right? So they're moving from out of California and Seattle, which, you know, these bastions of liberal thinking, they're getting out of their bubble and they're moving here. They're moving to places like Portland and Eugene, and even to some extent my town of Bend, which is on the eastern side of the state. So Oregon is kind of divided up into two states. There's the West Coast, which is more liberal. It's called the Willamette Valley. You got Portland, Corvallis, Salem, Eugene, on and on and on, which are kind of the more wetter. Like when people think of Oregon, they think of really wet, lots of rain. That's all Willamette Valley. Then there's the Cascade Mountain Range, and everything to the east of the Cascade Mountain Range is kind of this dry desert area. And it's much more rancher, farmer, and there was a ton of logging here in Bend back in the all the way up to the 80s. So, yeah, it's kind of like this very, very different sets of cultures. There's kind of left coast versus right coast, right? West side of the mountains, east side of the mountains. So the population growth has caused the native people of Oregon, who were typically more of the rugged individualism mentality, to be pushed out by Californians and Seattleites as a result. Remember, this is the state of Lewis and Clark. We're proud of that westward expansion heritage. The outrage against Californians by the native Oregonian community is on par with that of the Luddites. Okay, now if you go do your research on who the Luddites are, okay, pretty rebellious group of people. And that's really important to remember. I want you to remember rebellious people, okay? And that's where I'm making this comparison about the outrage that the native people of Oregon feel towards the infiltrator that is the Californian and the Seattleite that have moved into these central cities like Portland and Eugene, right? And kind of they've globbed into they've gone from one sphere of their own devise to another sphere of their own device, and they completely ignore 90% of the state, right? They've got their little bubble, and they think that's the whole world. So the feeling is that Portland makes the rules for the state. Oh, wait, I'm sorry. Let me go back. I skipped a part here. The movement to form another state is extremely strong in the south and eastern side of the state. See the state of Jefferson. Okay, so the state of Jefferson has been a movement. It's gone on for a long time. There was actually, before, was it World War II? There was a very strong push to make a new state that was going to be basically parts of Northern California and Southern and some of Eastern Oregon. That movement has been reinvigorated big time. And it even goes all the way up to Washington now. Like the state of Washington has the same kind of divide. It's like the east side of the Cascades and the west side of the Cascades. Two completely different philosophies. And this territorial breakdown is so strong that it's easy to identify where those dividing lines could be. And we could see a state basically the size of California break off, right? If you figure from like Washington, all of the east side of Washington and Oregon, all the way down into Northern California and maybe even parts of Nevada, that's basically the size of California, could break off and become its own state, potentially. Okay, and a lot of people don't think, oh, well, it's just a fleeting thought. No, this is a very, very strong movement. There is a lot of people that remember, okay, that remember that there was this State of Jefferson initiative, and they've globbed onto it saying, yeah, that same type of political divide is happening now, and we should do something about it. We're tired of being dictated to by these large cities full of these liberal people that don't understand our culture, don't care about our culture, don't pass laws based upon our culture. And cap and trade is a huge one. You think about what cap and trade is, it's about putting limitations on what you can do in industry and in farming and in ranching and all these things that, and logging, right? All these things that the eastern side of these states are really heavy into and produce all of the goods. And here you've got Portland and Salem and Eugene basically saying, well, you guys need to follow our ideals, right? Even though we don't know anything about your culture, we're just going to dictate to you what you have to do because we have these principles and this ideology. Okay, that's what's going on. It's really it's really kind of the quintessential problem between the left and the right. Okay, so the feeling is that Portland makes the rules for the state and ignores the people living in the other 90% of the territory. This should also help you understand the occupation of Mahler National Refugee, Wildlife Refuge, right? Remember that, right? Back in 2016. A bunch of people basically stormed the refuge and took it over. Oregon really is the quintessential urban versus rural conflict, which makes it a likely origin of the coming Civil War if there is one. It won't be North versus South. It will be rural versus urban. And in no place is that distinction more prevalent. So there's a bunch of things that I'm kind of bringing in there that I don't know that enough people even realize the connection here that I'm making in this post. And it resonates with a lot of people, obviously. Oh, I guess it wasn't the highest rate. I thought it was, but there you go. So there's a couple other comments that were pretty close, that were higher than mine. But I lied. Oh no, I lied. Anyway, so why am I bringing this up? Well, there was an article by the New Yorker back in 2017 that a lot of other sites are posting about. And yes, I know, the New Yorker, not exactly a wealth of great journalism, in my opinion. Very, very slanted. But there was this interesting thing that has been kind of kicked around quite a bit about civil discourse. And it has to do with this guy named Keith Mines, who is who's in the State Department. Okay, very much a liberal guy. Okay, very liberal. If you look at some of the things that he's said and policies that he promotes. But Mines has spent his career in the U.S. Army Special Forces and United Nations and now the State Department, navigating civil wars in other countries, including Afghanistan, Colombia, El Salvador, Iraq, Somalia, and Sudan. Mines was one of several national security experts whom foreign policy asked to... You know what? Let me move this over here so I can look at you guys. Here we go. Mines was one of several national security experts whom foreign policy asked to evaluate the risks of a second civil war. Mines concluded that the United States faces a 60% chance of civil war over the next 10 to 15 years. Now, he wrote this in 2017. And that got me thinking, what are the conditions that lead up to a civil war? What are those conditions? Why is it that so many people are saying, oh, well, we're kind of hitting that point where it's probably going to start? And here I just have another article by MarketWatch. So I wanted to try to find somebody a little bit more neutral than the New Yorker, right? So in November of 2018, I found this one by MarketWatch, which, is just basically economics, right? They're looking for the economics. They tend to be much more center of the road. A third of all Americans think such a conflict could break out within the next 5 years, with 10% thinking it's very likely to happen. State Department official Keith Mines told Foreign Policy magazine, "It's like 1859. Everyone is mad about something and everyone has a gun." I don't know about that last statement. See, like I said, he's very, very liberal. He rated the odds of a second American Civil War breaking out within the next 10 to 15 years at 60%. So that's what we've got. So going back to what are the causes of civil war? And these are just some things I want you to think about. So there was one piece by Intellectual Takeout that I found. This was written back in February of 2017. He's a pretty good middle of the road guy. Kind of like this, just let's have a natural discourse for things. Let's not be overtly, I don't know, I'm hesitating to grasp the word, but let's not be over the top about our rhetoric, right? Let's try to figure out where we can actually be reasonable about things. But he does go into the 5 causes of civil war besides slavery. So we're just, if you were to take that slavery piece out, and there were several different reasons that are propagated by the slavery issue, okay? But what are those things? We had sweeping economic changes, okay? So Southern political insecurity was exacerbated by external economic pressure. Around the globe, more and more countries were ramping up production of raw cotton, while Southerners boasted that cotton is king. Their primary export had become steadily less value in the decade leading up to the Civil War. So there was some economic upheaval going on, right? There was turmoil economically, which it seems like there's always something, right? There's always some sort of economic upheaval, but I think that you could say right now we are actually in one of those cases. It seems to me like the markets are just chugging along as normal, but look at our debt, right? Look at the vast amount of spending that's going on and how much, like we're in a $600 billion trade deficit, right? We have so many more things coming in than we are selling out, okay? And we have consistently been putting this, the debt, at some point, those debts are going to come to collect, right? And we're not producing enough to make up for our debts. That's a problem. It's a very unstable economic situation that I'm worried because at any moment, I think it could collapse. And we just don't know when that's going to happen. There's going to be some sort of trigger. Nobody ever knows when that trigger is, okay? Nobody ever predicts exactly what it is that's going to happen, but it happens. And all you have to do is look at the conditions that led up to any of those things, and you look at where we're at now, and you're like, how is this sustainable? How are we going to continue doing what we're doing? Number 2, the Union was rapidly changing amidst political upheaval. Okay, so there was politics that were causing this rapidly changing environment. There was a breakdown of decorum in civil discourse. Ooh, what does that sound like? There was a breakdown of decorum in civil discourse. And I think the social media platforms have probably made this happen tenfold compared to what it probably was, right? Fundamental disagreement of constitutional principles, right? A fundamental disagreement. This is number 4. Fundamental disagreement of constitution principles. So, yeah, I mean, how many times are we saying what is in the Constitution? How many times have we had people say that things are in the Constitution that aren't in the Constitution? Did you know that abortion is not in the Constitution? Okay? But yet people say that it's a constitutional crisis, if you will, right? That this is a matter of constitutional law. It's not. It has nothing to do with the Constitution. Yet people will say that because they don't understand it. Okay? So a fundamental disagreement of constitutional principles is a smaller issue than what I think we have today. And that we have people that don't even know what the Constitution is. And they're saying that these are constitutional principles. All right. And then finally, different nations and different dreams. So different directions. Like, what are the visions? And this is a good point. What is the vision that we see for our country? The left and the right have two completely different visions. The conservative movement wants to be conservative. They want to be more like what we were, what the founding principles were. Now, are we okay with like the abolishment of Jim Crow laws? Absolutely. We don't want any of that. We want racial divide to go away. In fact, that's what the Republican Party was founded on, was to eliminate those types of differences. But yeah, just two different visions, right? Two different nations. And so to kind of recap this whole thing, this whole article written by Jonathan Miltmore, he says, so to recap, in the lead up to Civil War, you had a rapidly changing economy precipitated by a suddenly expanding global marketplace, political upheaval and a period of national growth, sharp disagreement on the fundamental purpose of power in the federal government, a collapse of civil discourse and spasms of righteous violence, and a divided people with divergent dreams essentially attempting to build a nation in their own image built on their own ideals. Sound familiar? That's what led up to the Civil War. Now, yes, slavery was a big component of that, but when you look at all of the different things that slavery put into motion, right? You have the underpinnings of what actually caused the Civil War. And like if you put it that way, we have exactly the same conditions today. We really do. And it seems like every day it's getting worse. Now, I wasn't satisfied with just this comparison. Okay, I don't want to just look at our previous Civil War and say, oh, look at all the similarities, because civil wars occur because of several different reasons, right? There's different things that lead up to a civil war. So I started to look around and what other civil war is there that I could just kind of compare that's kind of fairly recent, but we have enough history of it. And I thought that I would go back to the Spanish Civil War. Okay? So, to start with, the Spanish Civil War, so it was a constitutional monarchy all the way up into 1921. Okay? And the government was so inefficient and corrupt that the army was sent to Spanish Morocco to put down a rebellion. Actually, it wasn't 1921. It was 23. Yeah, 1923. Okay, so the government, 1921, government was inefficient and corrupt. It was a constitutional monarchy. The army was sent into Spanish Morocco to put down a rebellion. Okay, so there was a rebellion. That's just kind of when things started to kind of heat up. Okay, in 1923, Spain experienced a bloodless coup when Alfonso, who was the constitutional monarch, agreed that General Primo de Rivera should take control of Spain. He ruled as a military dictator until 1930. Okay, so we had a military dictator all the way up until 1930. Rivera did not display the classical features of a dictator. He introduced public work schemes, building roads and irrigation of the land. So this is kind of one of those things that's funny because every time that you get a new political leader, it always seems like the first thing they want to do is public works programs. Right? They want to build things. They want to build schools. They want to build roads because they're trying to do whatever they can to garner the favor of the people. And if they build all these things for the people, then they're going to get their credibility with the people is going to rise, right? So it's one of the first things that they do. Industrial production increased by 3 times from 1923 to 1930. Rivera also ended the rebellion in Morocco in 1925. Then the Great Depression hit in the 1930s. Okay, and it hit Spain really, really hard. So in 1931, in 1931, elections were held in Spain, which resulted in Republicans winning all the major cities of Spain. And so Alfonso decided to abdicate. Okay, so because of course, Alfonso put the military, Rivera in charge of things, but in the background, of course, Alfonso was still the monarch. Then 2 important regions wanted independence, Catalonia and Basque. And the government believed that the army had too much say in politics. So we've got the military starting to get involved in quelching these independent pushes, right? These things of these we want a divided state. We want independence. Didn't I just get done talking about the state of Jefferson in the state of Oregon, right? Washington, Northern California. Okay, some sort of independence, a restructuring of the country, a restructuring of the dividing lines, right? And that's what we saw in the early Spanish Civil War. And of course, the government believed that the army had too much say in politics. Now, luckily, we don't really have a lot. The army does not say much in politics. The Army, Navy, the Special Force, Armed Forces does not really have a lot of political clout in our current system of government. Could that change? Right? If you think about it, the way that a military gets involved into politics is once they get called upon in order to stop rebellions. So we may not see that culture yet. We may not see the military getting involved in politics yet. But if they start to get involved in putting down rebellions, putting down groups of people that are wanting to split away, yeah, we could see the army get involved in politics. And once that happens, then the government starts to say, well, you guys have too much power in the military. We're the government. We are the government. You guys aren't the government. You are a tool of the government. The Republic faced losing the support of those who supported it, desperately needing the working class. So the working class, was once the economy started to struggle, right? When that economy starts to struggle, the working class starts to rebel against that government because they think the government's not doing enough to help out the working class. So yeah, that's kind of, that's kind of what's going to happen when there is some sort of economic crisis. Right now, we don't have an economic crisis, right? That's kind of, if you were to look at one thing that would probably turn this thing from off to on, it's that economy, right? So long as our economy continues to chug along the way that it is, the Civil War is not really going to happen. But let me tell you, as soon as that happens, you are going to see this kind of thing happen, right? You're going to start to see these political divides. This upheaval of the working class against the government is going to start happening, because that's how it always goes, right? That's anytime there's an economic crisis, the government gets blamed, and then the government tries to put down those rebellions. They get the army involved, then the army's involved in politics. Those who governed Spain had differing views on what to do. The wishes of the left alarmed those on the right, and vice versa. Political infight was in danger of pushing Spain into social revolution. Gee, that doesn't sound familiar. The historic privileges of the Roman Catholic Church were attacked. Ooh, so the church was attacked? You mean so there was this distrust by the left of the church? Don't see that in today's world, do we? Jesuits, seen as hardline Roman Catholics, were expelled from Spain. Okay, again, you are, understandably, the Roman Catholic government in Spain was much more entrenched than what we see in America, right? It was a part of the political body, if you will, even though it wasn't directly involved. It was kind of imparting influence. Huge estates in Spain were nationalized, taken over by the government. Huge estates in Spain were nationalized. I wonder what the left wants to do, right? How much of this rhetoric of the wealthy, right? The income disparate, the income gap, right? How much of that are they going to, they keep pushing this narrative. What does that tell you? They want to take the money from the rich to distribute to the other people, right? The lower class. So how are they going to do that? Well, let's nationalize it. Let's take it over. Government tried to attack those who demand as having too many privileges in society. Government tried to attack those it deemed as having too many privileges in society. Again, the rich, you're too privileged. You're white, you're male. You have too many privileges. The government tried to attack those it deemed to have too many privileges. I wonder, you start seeing these similarities, right? In even the Spanish Civil War, one that you probably had no idea. There's people that probably have no idea that Spain actually even had a civil war in the 30s. They had no idea, right? But these are the things that were there. The government of Azana, having lost support from the right, also lost support from the left. So the government, which was more of a centralized government at the time, lost support from both sides. Azana's government was too middle of the road. Both wanted a more communistic state and the overthrow of capitalism. So there's that thing. They wanted a more communist state and the overthrow of capitalism. Again, what do you hear the left saying constantly about capitalism? You have I forget exactly her position in Colorado, but she's like a Colorado senator that basically said, I want to get rid of capitalism. It is a goal of the left to get rid of capitalism. It's evil in their eyes. It's what's caused the income disparity. It's what's caused the wage gap. It's what's caused the women to earn less, the wage gap, right, between men and women. It's all capitalism. Matters came to a head when, in January 1933, 25 people were killed by government troops who were attempting to catch some anarchists, right? So there's the government troops, there's the army, there's the military coming in, trying to stop some sort of rebellion, even though it's a small one. 25 people were killed to catch some anarchists, right? A small little thing. Azana resigned as prime minister, and the elections were called for in 1933. So there was a call for new elections. Now, the right wing in 1933 wins a majority of support and the largest party in the parliament. So all of a sudden now you have this sweeping change. You have this sentiment of the left that is gaining more and more control. And what happens is the pendulum swings hard. The people kind of rebel against this. The right wing says, no. All these policies, we've gone way too far. We've gone so far to the left. So there's a huge sweep of conservatism, right? Right-wing government immediately overturns all of those changes, right? You get a majority support. Let's rescind everything that's caused this, because if we can backtrack enough, maybe we can stop this. Okay? Right-wing government immediately overturned all of the changes brought in by the Azana government. Doesn't that sound a lot like Obama goes in, puts in I got a pen and a phone. I'm going to put in all of these different dictates, starting from Obamacare, right? I'm going to put in all these dictates. And then what happens? A big push of conservatism, and Republicans go in with almost the explicit mandate, overturn everything this guy did, right? That's kind of the conservative side of things for the 2018 elections, or 2016 elections, was let's do away with what happened, because we want to forget what the last 8 years was, okay? That's kind of what we're seeing. Right-wing government immediately overturns all the changes brought in by the leftist government. And then many parties of the left decide to come together, organize strikes, riots, and took part in acts of violence, such as derailing mainline trains. The left comes together and has riots, strikes, takes part in small little violent acts, such as derailing mainline trains. So kind of trying to bust up the economy, causing havoc. We haven't seen that in places like Baltimore, have we? No. General Franco assumed control of the military. He took control of the Spanish Morocco after overthrowing the civilian government there. And his next target was to invade mainland Spain, establishing a military government there and rid the country of all those involved in left-wing politics. The left would have to fight for survival. Okay, so, it was kind of like, okay, we've got too much unrest now. Get the military. There it is. There's how it starts, right? So you see all of these there's all of these precursors, these signs that led up to the Civil War. And the only thing that I think that we're currently missing, well, actually, there's two components that are currently missing, right? Number one is the economics. The only thing, the last leg that we have standing that is really kind of the preventing this war from happening is the economy. It's still going along strong enough. But the problem is the long-term economic forecasts for this country are not good. They are really, really not good. We have so much debt. We are in such a huge deficit, both in terms of the amount of money that has come that we owe to other countries and to the banks, right? And then also the trade deficit, right? And it may seem like, yes, in some ways the trade deficit is in it of itself a bad thing. Don't get me wrong here. I'm not saying that, but under our current circumstance, we don't have a strong enough outgrowing, right? We don't export enough goods to help compensate for the debt we've accumulated, right? That's basic economics. We we are not producing enough goods. We are not bringing enough income as a country in order to compensate for the debts that we owe. It's simple economics. So, yeah, that last leg, how much longer do you think we can keep cruising along with this? How much bigger is our debt going to get? We're already talking about our grandkids are going to be in debt for what we are currently spending. And it happens yearly. And both sides are responsible for this, right? Both the left and the right. Republicans and Democrats have continued to let this thing fester and continue to become a problem until they're just kicking the can down the road. But you know what? Eventually that can's going to get kicked right back in your face. All right? It's going to happen. And when that happens, the economy is going to tank. You're going to have people, now you have the economic problems. You're going to see the people rebel against the government in those circumstances. You're going to see, so once that happens, you have the military getting involved, right? Because you got to have some way, the government's going to try to take control of the situation. They're going to come in, they're going to start, they're going to start trying to put down the people whenever they start to see a little hot spot of some sort of unrest. So those are really the two cards that we're waiting for, right? Those are the two things that we're really waiting for, is the economic problem, which I think is we're heading straight towards, and then the military involvement, right? Getting the military involved. Once those two things happen, you've got a civil war. It's pretty much inevitable. It's on the way home. So yeah, big heavy stuff, right? Big heavy stuff. I admit I'm not painting a rosy picture here. Okay, so Keith Blanche says, "Am I the only one seeing the starting soon screen?" Yes, you are the only one seeing the starting soon screen. Sorry about that. Center Negative says, "Yep." Andy Lyford says, "Half of Americans can't afford an unexpected $400 bill." Yeah, that's right. Like, we are living honestly on borrowed time right now economically. People cannot afford what they're currently spending. Let alone are they really preparing themselves for, like you said, an unexpected bill, right? You go to the hospital and all of a sudden your life is turned upside down. All right, well, thank you everybody for watching. I appreciate you guys sticking around with me. Tell me what you guys think. Do you think that we're leading to civil war? Maybe I'm just, maybe it's just Steve being Steve, right? I'd really like to hear your thoughts. Do you think that it's happening? Do you think that the conditions are right for it? Or do you think there's something not going to happen? Or is there something about the American people that just so anti-war in a way, or anti-conflict and neighborly enough that you think that it's not going to happen? There's just too much of a distaste for it in the American culture. I don't know. I honestly, I think that there's plenty of people out there that are willing to cause conflict. I mean, look at the trolls. Look at the trolls that we have online. People that seed distrust and hatred just as a means of entertainment. Right? They exist. You and I might have a tremendous discourse. We may be friends. We may be, great people to have a conversation with. And yeah, we might have a disagreement, but everything's amicable. But we're not everybody, right? There's a lot of people out there in America that are just sowing the seeds of distrust on purpose because they find it funny. They find it entertaining. They find it whatever. So tell me what you think. Am I missing something here? Is there a component that you guys see that I missed, that I didn't cover, that is preventing this whole thing from happening? Do you think that it will happen in our lifetime, or do you think it won't happen in our lifetime? Do you think something else is going to happen? Maybe the country gets resolved altogether. Who knows? What do you think of the state of Jefferson? I don't know if you guys have read about it, but check it out. State of Jefferson is pretty interesting stuff. Anyway, let me know what you guys think. If you have any stuff you want to talk about, you want me to discuss on this channel, please just drop me a comment in the comment section below this video. And as long as it's a good one, I like to cover whatever you guys want to talk about. I get kind of tired of coming up with all this stuff for you guys. You give me some ideas, would you? All right. I'll talk to you guys tomorrow. Until then, hopefully you have a great Wednesday. Thanks for watching.